The story of I-69 is still being written. The interstate exists in two disconnected portions in Indiana. 67 miles of the road from Evansville to Crane opened in 2012. The other portion of the road, which is not new, starts north of Indianapolis and extends to the Michigan border. As crews continue to work in Indiana, many questions remain. Where will funding to finish the road come from? Will it achieve its full economic potential? How will it bridge state lines to create a trade corridor across the middle of America? Sarah Whitmire reports on the challenges that lie ahead.
Representatives from all the states along the I-69 corridor convened in Bloomington this week for the I-69 Regional Summit. How to fund the road and create opportunities for economic growth remain the biggest questions.
We are only going to realize a small portion of the potential of this infrastructure development unless and until the corridor is complete, okay? And with the demise of major funding for interstate highways at the federal level, it depends more and more on states acting on their own.
David Reed, who is a former economist with the Hudson Institute, worked with early visionaries in the 1980s to develop plans for a mid-continent highway that would connect Canada to Mexico through the Midwest.
It's clear that places like Texas and Mississippi are serious about it. It's not so clear that other states along the corridor are equally serious. And I think that it's important that those of us who really believe in the potential of this road be more aggressive in terms of reaching out to those states, those communities along the road, and helping them understand the potential that it has for their long-term growth and development.
The first 67 miles of I-69 in southern Indiana opened in 2012. It starts in Evansville and ends at Crane. There's little traffic on the road and no development. Joe Wellman is the mayor of Washington, Indiana. He says a lot of things are happening behind the scenes, such as infrastructure upgrades and zoning changes. The major US 50 I-69 interchange sits in Washington's city limits. Wellman says soon it will be better than shovel-ready.
We're getting a lot of inquiries. I think a lot of business is waiting to see how the road structure, once our new road is constructed, and get the road open here to Bloomington, because business decides a lot based on traffic counts. Traffic has been increasing. I think once we get it open to Bloomington, we'll have a lot more traffic between Bloomington and Evansville for sure. And I think that will cause some businesses to sign on the dotted line, if you will, and start to do something.
5 of the 6 sections of I-69 in Indiana have funding or a financing plan in place. Money for sections 1 through 3 came from the lease of Indiana's toll road. That allocation is now all gone. The gas tax was primarily used to fund Section 4 from Crane to Bloomington. Section 5 from Bloomington to Martinsville is funded through a public-private partnership. The state hired the company Isolux to construct and operate that section of the interstate.
So they're putting up the upfront money to build it, and then we will pay them an amount of money every year for the maintenance and repayment, if you will, of the original funding.
Funding for Section 6 from Martinsville to Indianapolis remains a major question mark until INDOT decides what route the road will take. It could continue north up 37, go west, or east. The only stipulation is that it has to connect to Interstate 465.
Until we make those decisions, you don't really know what kind of a road you have, and therefore the idea of how you're going to fund it is a little tough to come by. But it's the possibilities are everything that's a possibility on any road today. You can borrow money, you can do the public-private partnership idea. A legislature could decide to fund it, the Congress could decide to fund it.
There's also no money to fund the bridge necessary to connect Evansville to Kentucky. A span across the Ohio River was estimated at $1.2 billion in 2013.
The states are looking at where the funding is going to come from their standpoint. I'm on the Transportation Committee in Washington. I'm looking at federal options to help us fund the bridge. Right now, there's no earmarks, so I can't earmark the money for the bridge. But I think there is opportunity because it's such a significant project that the federal government will be able to help fund it.
This just does not affect people along the interstate of I-69. This is the whole state, and we are all interested in this. The Midwest is interested in this, and frankly, North America is interested in this, because this will keep us competitive with the rest of the world. And in a 21st century, when we're competing with people and places whose names we can barely pronounce, this road is going to help level the playing field.
In the meantime, Mayor Wellman says work in Washington will continue. The road is about a year behind schedule now, mostly due to issues with the train in Section 4 near Bloomington. But Wellman wants his community to be poised for development when the opportunity comes.
We have seen a real impetus in our community to work together to make things happen.
That grassroots effort in Washington is what got the road started. And ironically, the economist David Reed laughs, it's the same kind of effort that'll be necessary to finish it.
Grassroots is really key to this because the money is not likely to come from the federal level, at least as generously as it used to.
Talking about grassroots efforts, you might remember the name David Graham. In our I-69 documentary produced in 2011, Graham talked about how he drove up and down the corridor decades ago, meeting with politicians and community leaders, trying to get their support for an idea he had to build a free trade highway. He was the leader of the I-69 grassroots effort. He was honored this week in Washington at a bridge dedication. A memorial sign which bears his name is being posted on the I-69 southbound bridge overpass in Washington. The northbound bridge is being dedicated to Jim Newland, the first director of the I-69 coalition. Combined, the men spent more than half a century working to make I-69 a reality. Graham also attended this week's summit and challenged those in attendance to finish the free trade highway. Sarah Whitmire joins us now to tell us more about the efforts to complete the highway. And Sarah, I feel like when I hear the word innovative being used all the time with I-69 trying to fund this highway, is it going to happen?
That's what everyone at this week's summit, the word they were using, innovative, innovative. It's because we used to be able to rely on the gas tax to fund these major infrastructure projects. And as we know, the money from the gas tax is just continuing to decline because cars are more fuel efficient. And more importantly, perhaps the gas tax has not been raised in decades. And finding someone who is willing to champion a bill to raise a tax, the chances of that are slim.
And you talked with Congressman Larry Bouchon, who 69 runs through his district, and Rokita.
It doesn't run through his district, interestingly enough.
But what about just kind of, we heard him talking in the story, but were you able to get a little bit more out of him in terms of, is DC really going to help fund this?
It's interesting because they say it absolutely is a priority in Washington, D.C., but what they did tell me is that until people in Congress are willing to sit down and look at the entire pie of federal spending, no, it's not going to happen. They said you've got to look at entitlements. Currently there's not a long-term highway funding bill in place. Last year they passed an extension. So they're saying we've got to look at all these other different options that could potentially replace the gas tax. And Rokita told me, that's not that hard. It's just getting people to agree to sit down and do it.
Okay, thanks, Sarah.